So what is sensory design? Sensory design is something that is used in businesses, like to sell products, to get consumers to buy things. It's a diagnosis of how people are affected by a certain product or a certain experience, and in a way to define appropriate means to design and redesign the product based on that. A couple of examples of this is that a car manufacturer, when they're making a car, they've designed the sound, so like you have this nice funky Audi sound of the car, for instance. Or the perfume industry, they're designing their perfumes, they'll smell nice, the product, the consumer will want to buy it and feel it has a nice smell to it and a nice look to it. Or the grocery stores, they would have bakeries and pastries and bread. When you get into the stores, you feel hungry and you have a pleasant feeling when you get into the room. And also a good example is the clothes store that have music to have a nice ambient atmosphere. And to understand how this works, the brain takes in a lot of information from our senses. It's at least 100 million bits. I made some very simple view of the brain. I know there's a person who actually studies how the brain works in here, so this is a very simplified view. But basically we're taking a lot of sensory information. And most of that is handled in a subconscious way. It means we're not actually aware of it. I don't always feel exactly how the clothes is on my body or exactly how warm or cold it is or if I'm hungry or not. But it will affect me all the time. It will affect me. And when we're in a LARP, it's the same thing. We're taking in all this information all the time. And most of it just comes into our consciousness in feelings and in abstract pictures. And that's what they use when they're doing sensory design with cars or sense in stores. It's nothing we think about, but it's there and it affects us. So I started wondering, like, how much do we think about this when we are designing larps ourselves? This is affecting us all the time, but are we thinking about it? Are we designing for it? And I thought the best way to answer that is to do some statistics. So I went through half a dozen of some of the more important works that have been done in the Knudepunkt community. And I searched for certain words that had to do with senses, like see or hear, taste, smell. And when I did this, I sorted away all the words which did not have to do with senses. Like, I see you are, that's a sound argument. Or I see your point. So those words were removed. Only the ones that had to do with a certain feeling were taken into this analysis. And I made like a map over how much these words were used. And I was pretty amazed, actually. I thought that the seeing and the visual part would be like huge. But actually it turns out that we also talk a lot about music. We write a lot about music. On the hand side, you see that a lot of things we don't talk much about, like senses here. There's some taste over there, fairly invisible. Some other things you can't even see because they're small, like odor, perfume, aroma. These words that's mentioned so few times that you can't even see them on the map. Food is there big, but that's mainly because it's a practical thing. Like we have to arrange food for people on the LARP, while taste is just mentioned a few times. So we think about food, but we don't really care what it tastes like. So these senses are affecting us, and they're quite important. I think when we design LARPs, we usually think about them, often think about them as movies. Like a movie has a sound system, it has a video system, that's what you work with. So I think many kind of copies that, like the audiovisual effect aspect is very important. But there are some who don't do that, who looks beyond that, saying that live-action role-playing games are also bodily and all-encompassing works, in which each movement, sound, taste, smell, touch, even thought are part of the work. There is a concept called sensory immersion, which is a concept developed by in gaming theory. It basically says that sensory immersion is achieved through the audiovisual aspects of a game, like as a video game. But in LARP, this would be everything in the LARP, the physical surroundings and the characters in the fictional world. So, how much are we, so it seems like that there is, we kind of know, we understand that it is important to work with all the different aspects of this. And I want to take some examples of how different groups have been working with the different senses throughout the world. So I'll go through that. I go through some of the work that I've done with stimulating all the different senses, and eventually end up in some ideas and discussion about it. The first example is from a LARP called Spirit Summer, which is made by
Saint Summer.
Saint Summer, sorry, Saint Summer. Made by Olga Showman here. Which was a game where music had a central part. It was about a hippie camp during the 70s. And the whole camp was built around a central stage where they were playing music. And music came back all the time. They would have like a scene where people were dancing to music. And as the music changed, the scene would change. And the music would lead people into new feelings and new we call it, emotions. And also they would use music in a sense, for example, if it would be drug, you'd be listening to certain earphones, MP3 players, which had what you call like lost the word here, but music that made you feel like you were on a high, like you were drugged. And another, and this is something that, as I understand, is pretty common in Russia, that this was played, that you work a lot with music. There was another game made in Russia called Ticket to Atlantis, where they were walking around with earphones, more or less the whole game. This game was a Stephen King-ish mystery horror game set in a small village in the US. And these earphones were connected to an armlet, and something called the music engine. And this music engine, it would sense where the player was, like where in the physical area was the player, which other players were nearby, and depending on all these different factors, it would pick a song on this machine that the player had selected themselves and play those songs, so to get the player into the right mood. So if you saw your long lost love, then suddenly you would have like love songs or melancholy, or something you had selected as melancholy playing into your ears to enhance that feeling. I thought that was pretty funky. If you want to learn more about this, you can talk to Vasily and the rest of his team. They'll be presenting these things and showing them off later here at Knutpunkt. And this, of course, led to pretty intense gaming experience. Another guy I think makes pretty funky stuff is someone called Aaron Bannock, who lives in the US, a LARP producer, who has a lot of fun, good quotes about how to design LARP for all the senses. And he started elaborating with it, designing a LARP where you would only use a couple of your senses. This was a LARP called Steeds, steed like that you ride on, and this is the steed. He or she would be deprived some of the senses, so he wouldn't see what he was doing, but he would be able to touch around and walk around in the physical environment. And there would be another person sitting next to a computer screen who would look through the video camera, which was on the head of the steed. And that person was called the rider. So the rider would direct this person around. So that they would, together, they would be all the senses, but they would split up in a way to experiment with this feeling. And so I understood it was kind of playing a video game, sitting there doing this, and they had different tasks they were supposed to do. Aaron has also experimented a lot with scent. For instance, when he played one LARP, he had the scent of sage all the time, from incense to, and another LARP, he had a scent of, check this, of cinnamon oil. It was a hippie LARP. It was smelling of cinnamon oil to get this nice, well-smelling feeling around him. And this is something that we have a proud tradition of in Sweden, where I come from. Very early in the 90s, we had the orcs who shower themselves in fermented herring, surströmming. So basically, if anyone knows what surströmming is, you're forbidden to open these in hotels because they smell so awfully bad. You have to evacuate the whole place. So as far as I've heard, you could like smell these orcs coming from far away. So that's like an interesting version of scent design. It's also something that a group that I was in worked with later. These are the Danagil, a version of steampunk elves. We were like 30 or 40 people. We'd all put on lavender. So we had this pleasant smell instead. And many people didn't even notice it, but it's like, it's always so pleasant when you come around, and they couldn't really figure out why. Another version of doing an ooky smell this is from a larp called Helsingin Camarilla. And this is a girl having a Nosferatu mask. And into the mask, it's not only looking bad, but it's also into the mask they built like stinking juices, like rotten juices. So that the whole mask will have like a stinky smell to it, to give that extra dimension. And there's also something that we think you can work with in zombie larps, like you can smell the zombies, dead meat, before you even get there. And another opposite to this is a Swedish larp, where there were a group of fairies who had a perfume each. So they were all like materialized, or they were symbolized by the perfume smell. So we've been working a bit with this. This autumn, I designed a larp called Clockbottom. It was an international steampunk larp set in Sweden. Or it was played in Sweden, but it was set in the US during the American Civil War. And this larp, I just developed a concept called 5.1 larping, which is like you take 360-degree larping and you take it further, designing for all distances, not only for the vision. So for instance, we did work with vision. For instance, we had a designer who did posters and labels for the bottles and all these material signs and stuff for us. We had prop makers who would make quite a bunch of pretty cool props, and they wouldn't only look good, but the touch feeling was very important. Like they would have the right weight and stuff. That's pretty common in Sweden, but I know in American larps you can have behind like plastic things. But we really worked it like you should have the real functioning and the real touch to it. And we also had, regarding touch, we also worked with Arsamandi, which I think is a great touching method. Very pleasant. We worked with music. We found this 300, 400 kilo piano, like 100 years old. We wrecked a house in Stockholm, Richmond's house, to get it out and transport it to the area. And we had musicians who came there playing. We had several audio systems. Had like mini players who would hide inside the houses. So in the middle of the night, you'd have like a faint sound. And they would always be like very distant apart in time and very short, so people would never notice where they came from. Just suddenly there was this sound in the middle of the night and didn't know where it came from. And we actually, unfortunately, got some complaints afterwards. People found this a bit too unnerving. We even found these extremely small microphones or players. You see there's a cola cap next to it. You could hide them anywhere. You could put like under a table, under a chair. And they're not very strong, so if you're sitting in a group of people talking around, no one hears it. But when you're there alone, you get this voice from nowhere, like, hey, can you hear me? And I even got spooked myself because I didn't know where they were. I had a friend of mine placing them in certain areas, so I'd be walking there at 2 o'clock like, ah! A funny anecdote about this is that they did the same thing in an earlier Swedish larp, Martin Eriksson and a couple other people, where they had this whispers inside a house, more a similar thing, and someone recorded it on their cell phone and then played it up later when the producers knew that the system was shut off. They played it up like suddenly these whispers came from nowhere, and they were more afraid than the players were about this. No, it can't be happening. I'm not hearing this. We had a mine that we were playing in, so we put the sounds down there as well. So when you're working there, you can have this like footsteps follow you inside the mine, or like the sound of someone hacking far away in the mine. We were also supposed to have like a siren that would end the LARP session there, but unfortunately we had a technical problem. We fixed that. We also worked with the taste aspect. So this was set in the American South. So we made sure that we had a big team, a guy called Matti, who's a great cook in Sweden, and his team who were making food that was supposed to be as close as possible to the proper Southern American food, like gumbo and stuff like that. Fortunately, we don't have very good pictures. They did this under pretty bad, like difficult conditions, like more or less medieval kitchen, but I think they did a really good job. And so they had this creation. We also had a haunted house in the LARP, and it was of course complete with like strange sketches and drawings and a story about someone who hanged themselves and got crazy, and like a musical box inside. But there's also something else to it, and like people who went in there, they're like, there is something really bad in here, but they couldn't really figure out why. But many people went in there and they never came back. And the reason why was a week before I had put meat to rot, put some dirt in it, had it rot, and then just before the LARP I placed it in different areas which were supposed to be like spooky or give like negative vibes. And it wasn't enough for people to actually feel it strongly, like they didn't know that they were feeling it, but they felt there was something that wasn't right in this house. And I think much of it has to do with like this stench of death that was there. And we also did this in a stronger sense. We built a corpse, like a plastic skeleton, and then we built a body all of organic material. So vegetables, meat, that's a pig's tongue sticking out there. I put clothes on her and everything. And we dug her down 2 months before the LARP. And then 2 people went out in the middle of the night under like a full blood moon and dug this woman up like 1 meter deep. And they dug her up. And when they opened the grave, they had this stench coming towards them, like in building up rotten, like worms and maggots crawling around there. They told me it was a pretty intense experience. I believe them. So maybe we can reconsider some of the quotes or the sayings we have. Like, maybe it's not what you see is what you get, but what you see, hear, touch, smell, and taste is what you get. Think about that a little more. And develop 360-degree LARPs to also be 5.1 design LARPs. Think about all these different aspects. So, and I've done a little brainstorming about what we could do, like going from here. Probably some of these things are already done, but as far as I know, I don't know about it. I think we can work more with using commercial smells and other, like making our own little chemistry laboratories and trying to find out good smells we could use to enhance the gaming experience. I think we can work a lot more with sound design. Like finding sound, but also like using the one that's subconscious to alter people. So it's something we're already working with. I think we work more with it. You can work with bone conductors, for instance, to give people direct feed-in without disturbing the other people. And then in this case, it's the Mythbusters trying out the brown note. We're supposed to, like, you cannot, it's in a frequency, you cannot hear it, but it's supposed to make you shit your bricks. So Adam Savage is trying here. They didn't succeed. I don't know if we will, but if we do, it's going to be cool. For the producer, not for the LARPer. Maybe we can work more with touch design. We can like maybe go like first we'll have, this is a hair skirt used in the medieval times. Extremely uncomfortable to have. Maybe we can work with that. We can have parts of the time where people are wearing this, and then they will slip into like nice silks, just to like symbolize going from harsh times into better times. Working like that, or maybe you can have electrical heaters inside your clothes. So something when the right magic is activated, or when the person is supposed to have a certain feeling, it's heated up, so you can suddenly get another touch. And there was considering food as well. I know this group who were talking very serious about making food designed for different fantasy races, so that the elves would have like the things that go into caves, like this is like old stored cheese and old wine and stuff like that. There's also something interesting to work with food and like make it a part of your culture, like what we did when we used the Southern American food to like really create Southern American culture, like in the roots of it. And finally, I think we work more with more extreme methods. This is something called the Ganzfeld experience, which means that you give your brain information, but it's nonsense, like a red light in your eyes and white noise in your ears. And after about 15-20 minutes, you start hallucinating. So if you really want to create a feeling of you're taking LSD, you're hallucinating somewhere, well, do the Ganzfeld experience. If you dare.
How do you spell it?
Can you spell it?
G-A-N-Z G-A-N-Z F-E-L-D. There's also something that's become very popular on the internet, something called ASMR, Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, which is when you're subjected to certain like sounds, like it can just be someone, like a picture of a gift and someone's unwrapping the gift, or someone talking very soft noise, very close to a microphone. Very weird videos, but somehow they can give you like a stimulus, like almost like a little orgasm in your brain. For some reason, we don't really know why. But that's also something that might be interesting to check out if you do something like this in LARP. So, I'm thinking that we could go in little groups and start having a discussion about this. What do you know? How has this sensory design been done in LARPs that you've been to? Usually you think about the audio things, like I had a nice dress, but are there other aspects that you've seen? Also, how can we work with this in the future? How can we like progress and design LARPs to have like a really cool experience? And finally, like what can we subject LARPers to? Is rotten meat okay?